All the money in the world could not silence the emptiness inside Ethan Blackwood. Night after night, he sat alone in his grand library, surrounded by shelves of books he rarely touched, portraits of ancestors he barely remembered, and the heavy silence of a mansion that echoed his solitude. He was 38, a self-made millionaire, the man everyone envied. Yet tonight, as the storm raged outside, he stared at a single photograph in his trembling hands. In it, he was 5 years old, caught between the arms of his smiling parents, before cancer stole his mother and ambition swallowed his father whole. A tear escaped down his cheek, surprising even him, for he had taught himself never to cry. But loneliness, he realized, was a prison even wealth could not break. The sound of footsteps startled him. No one should be here at this hour, not even the staff. He raised his voice, half angry, half desperate. "Who's there?" From the shadows stepped Clara Miller, the maid who had worked for him silently for 2 years. She looked fragile in her black uniform, her eyes reflecting both fear and sadness. "Forgive me, Mr. Blackwood," she said softly. "I didn't know you were here. I came to borrow a book." Ethan, surprised by her honesty, studied her closely for the first time. There was something different about her, something he had never noticed. When she revealed it was the anniversary of her father's death, Ethan felt an unexpected pull in his heart. In that moment, he realized he was not the only one haunted by memories. Neither of them knew that this quiet, midnight meeting was the beginning of a bond that would change both of their lives forever. Would she remain by his side, or would fate steal her away before he could understand what she truly meant to him? The next morning, Ethan found himself restless, unable to shake the memory of Clara's words. He had spoken to countless people in his life, business partners, investors, rivals, but never had anyone looked at him with such sincerity, as though they could see beyond his fortune and into the hollow ache he carried inside. He tried to bury himself in work, reading reports and signing contracts, yet every line blurred as her quiet voice echoed in his mind. True wealth is in the moments we share, not the things we accumulate. That sentence struck him harder than the sharpest insult or the cruelest betrayal he had endured. Later that evening, he walked into the garden and was surprised to see Clara sitting on a stone bench, holding an old, worn-out book. She looked up, startled, and quickly stood, as though caught doing something wrong. But Ethan simply nodded, curious about her world. "What do you read so late?" he asked. Clara hesitated, then handed him the book. It was a collection of stories about resilience, about people who had nothing yet lived with joy. Ethan flipped through the pages, his chest tightening. It was the opposite of his life. He had everything, yet no joy. They talked for hours beneath the dim light of the lanterns, sharing pieces of their lives they had never revealed to anyone else. Clara spoke about her father, a fisherman lost to the sea, and the struggles her family endured afterward. Ethan in turn admitted how betrayal had become a pattern in his life, how even love had always been tied to business. For the first time he felt lighter, as though speaking the truth had set him free. But just as hope began to flicker inside him, Clara's eyes clouded with a secret she didn't share. And Ethan, though curious, didn't press her. He didn't know that this silence would one day become the greatest mystery of his life. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan noticed a change he could not ignore. The mansion that once felt like a prison now carried a different air whenever Clara was near. Her quiet presence seemed to soften the coldness of the halls, and her laughter, rare as it was, brought a warmth that unsettled him in the best way. He began to find excuses to cross paths with her, asking about a missing file, lingering too long in the kitchen for coffee, or wandering into the library late at night in hopes she might be there again. He told himself it was curiosity, but deep down he knew it was something far more dangerous. One evening, after a long meeting that left him drained, Ethan returned to the mansion earlier than usual. He heard music faintly drifting from the staff quarters. Soft, old melodies played on a small radio. Following the sound, he found Clara sitting by the window mending a piece of clothing. She looked up, startled, but her smile was gentle, unpretentious. "You shouldn't be here, sir," she whispered. But Ethan only leaned against the doorframe, watching her as though seeing life for the first time. "Maybe this is where I should have been all along," he replied quietly. Clara lowered her gaze, hiding emotions she didn't dare reveal. In her silence, Ethan saw the weight she carried, secrets pressed tightly against her heart. He wanted to ask, to demand why someone so genuine looked as though she carried invisible scars. But before he could speak, she rose, excused herself politely, and slipped away, leaving Ethan with more questions than answers. That night, as he lay awake staring at the ceiling, he realized the truth. This woman who had lived unnoticed in his home for 2 years was now the only person he could not stop thinking about. And yet, he had no idea that she was about to vanish, leaving behind a void he never thought possible. Ethan's routine was broken the following week when Clara failed to appear. At first he thought nothing of it. Perhaps she had taken the day off, or maybe she was simply occupied with tasks elsewhere in the mansion. But when the second day passed, then the third, unease crept into his chest like a slow-burning fire. He asked the head housekeeper about her, only to receive a short reply. Clara had requested a leave of absence. 8 months. No reason given, no explanation, no forwarding address. She was simply gone. Ethan couldn't understand it. Why would she leave so suddenly, right after they had begun to share pieces of themselves no one else had ever seen? He tried to push her out of his thoughts, convincing himself she was just an employee. But every room she once occupied now felt unbearably empty. He found himself drifting back to the library at midnight, hoping to hear her soft footsteps. He returned to the garden bench where they had spoken, his hand tracing the cold stone as if her presence lingered there. He even pulled the worn book of resilience stories from the shelf, flipping through its pages as though answers might fall between the lines. Weeks turned into months. Clara's absence gnawed at him in a way that startled him. Women had left him before, lovers, partners, even friends, but never had anyone's silence felt so final, so heavy. And yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that her departure wasn't simple, that behind it lay a truth too painful to reveal. The more he thought about it, the more restless he became. Until one late evening, as the storm clouds gathered outside just as they had on the night they first spoke, the phone rang. Ethan picked it up without hesitation, but nothing could have prepared him for the voice on the other end. A voice that would shake the foundations of everything he thought he knew. "Mr. Blackwood?" The voice was trembling, weak, yet unmistakably Clara's. Ethan froze, gripping the phone so tightly his knuckles whitened. For months he had replayed her absence in his mind, tortured by questions with no answers. And now here she was, fragile, breathless, as if each word cost her strength. Clara? His voice cracked, something it hadn't done in years. Where are you? Why did you leave without saying a word? There was a pause, heavy with unspoken truths. Then she whispered, I didn't want you to see me like this. Ethan's heart raced. Like what? He demanded, desperation lacing his words. On the other end came the sound of labored breathing, the faint echo of hospital machinery in the background. I'm unwell, she admitted, her tone breaking. I thought if I disappeared, it would be easier for you to forget me. I couldn't bear the thought of you pitying me, or worse, resenting me. Ethan's throat tightened, as if the air itself had vanished. This was the woman who had seen through his walls, who had dared to remind him of what truly mattered, now confessing that she was fighting a battle she had hidden from him all along. Tell me where you are, he said firmly, no hesitation in his voice. I don't care about the money, the empire, or any of it. I just need to see you. Clara hesitated, and for a moment Ethan feared she would hang up. But finally, she whispered the name of a small hospital far from the city. The line went dead, leaving Ethan trembling, his heart pounding with urgency. For the first time in his life, he realized that this wasn't about saving an empire or securing a legacy. It was about saving the one person who had reminded him he was still human. Without wasting another second, Ethan grabbed his coat and rushed into the storm, determined to find her before it was too late. Rain lashed against the windshield as Ethan sped through the night, his heart racing faster than the storm outside. Every second felt like an eternity, every mile a battle against fear. He couldn't stop hearing her voice, the weakness in her tone, the quiet pain she had tried to hide. The thought of Clara lying alone in a hospital bed while he had spent months drowning in self-pity tore at him. He had wasted so much time, blinded by his own loneliness, when all along she had been carrying a heavier burden in silence. When he finally reached the small countryside hospital, the sight of its dimly lit entrance made his chest tighten. Inside, the sterile smell of medicine and the echo of distant footsteps filled the air. He asked for her at the desk, his voice urgent, and was guided to a quiet room at the end of the corridor. There she was, frail, pale, yet still possessing the same calm presence that had once softened his darkest nights. Her eyes fluttered open when she heard his steps. Shock registered across her face, followed by tears she could no longer hold back. "You came," she whispered, her voice breaking. Ethan moved closer, taking her hand gently in his. "Of course I came. You disappeared and took half my soul with you," he confessed, his voice heavy with raw truth. Clara's lips curved into a weak smile. "I didn't want to be your burden." Ethan shook his head, tears slipping down his face for the first time in years. "You are not my burden, Clara. You are the reason I still believe in something beyond wealth and emptiness. You are the only thing real in my life." In that moment, the storm outside seemed to fade. For the first time, Ethan understood the kind of wealth Clara's father had spoken of, the wealth of love, connection, and memories that could not be bought. Holding her hand, he made a silent vow. He would fight for her, stand beside her, and never again let silence or fear steal away what truly mattered. The mansion, the fortune, the empire, it all seemed small compared to this fragile, unbreakable bond. Whatever time they had left, he would make it count, because in her eyes, he had finally found the home he had been searching for all his life.